All right. We're in Revelation chapter 12. The trumpets have been warning judgments. The oppressor will not repent. That shows the hard-headedness, the fierceness of the ungodliness that's involved. Chapters 10, 11, and 12 are given to comfort the saints. 10 says, last phrase of 6, no more delay. They've had all their chances. 11 says, the church of God wins, even in the face of their troubles. Chapter 12 says, the devil who's behind Rome, who's behind the oppressors, is a 3-time loser. There's a pregnant woman in chapter 12. She's the people of God. She's got a crown of 12 stars on her head. 12:2, she's pregnant with a child. She wants to be delivered. 12:3 says there's a sign, another one, a great red dragon. He has 7 heads and 10 horns. Why is that? Because the manifestation of the devil in that day is through a beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. His instrument of violence, his instrument of opposition in the day that John is writing is a 7-headed beast with 10 horns. Rome is his persecuting agent. So the dragon manifests himself in the form of a 7-headed beast with 10 horns. We'll talk about the 7 heads and 10 horns again when we get to chapter 13. His tail is able to drag down 1/3 part of the stars of the heavens. That would indicate he's able to succeed in persecution with the children of God to some degree, you see? It would also indicate how fearsome he is. Any dragon that has a tail that can reach to heaven and tear down 1/3 of the stars of heaven is a biggie. Powerful. Powerful. But somewhat successful against the people of God. He cast them down to the earth. The dragon stood before the woman that is about to be delivered, that when she is delivered, he may devour her child. She was delivered of a son, verse 5, a man-child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. Psalm chapter 2, 7 and following. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my son. Ask of me, and I will give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost part of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt rule them with a rod of iron. You'll break them in pieces as a potter's vessel. The Christ promised this kind of authority to the overcomer in chapter 2, 28 and following, and similarly in 3:21. Now there are those who think that the child here in verse 5 is the personification of the kingdom. That's the saints who rule the earth with a rod of iron. Well, that's arguable. It's arguable. But the people of God produce a child. It's the people of God who's producing the child. The child comes because the people of God need him. Why did Christ leave heaven? Because I needed him. Why did Christ come from heaven to reach for me? Because Abraham and Jacob and Isaac and David and all of the rest of them all needed him. The people of God in the Old Testament, the righteous remnant, stood up and lived under God and brought forth the Christ. Why did he hem them in with the law? That he might have a godly seed. That the Christ might be born. Galatians 3 and verse 19. Wherefore then serveth the law? That Christ might be born in holiness, under an environment where he could learn about Jehovah. Wherefore then serveth the law? It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come, to whom the promise was made. So then, in chapter 12 and verse 5, we have a child born from the people of God. Verse 6, well, this child, last phrase, is caught up unto God, unto his throne. The dragon wants to kill him. Well, There'd be a number of illustrations of that being manifested in the devil. As soon as he was born, well, not quite, but almost as soon as he was born, the devil wanted to get a hold of him. He couldn't even win against a baby. He couldn't even win against a baby. The baby's taken up into heaven. There's the preservation and the providence of God. The devil's a loser. Now, the woman who produced the baby is forced to flee. Flee into a wilderness. Who is it that flees into the wilderness? It's the people of God. In ancient times, the people of God knew what wilderness wanderings were. Elijah was in the wilderness and knew what the problem was. But Elijah, like Israel, though being brought through the wilderness, is sustained by God in the wilderness. Israel went through the wilderness for 40 years. Did the Lord take care of them there? Sure He did. Sure He did. Their clothes didn't wax old in their bodies. Their shoes held out. He fed them manna from heaven. Gave them water out of rocks right in the wilderness. Elijah, during that 3.5 year period, Elijah, God's man, was taken care of. A wilderness experience for the people of God is not at all unusual. But sustenance for the people of God during that time is what we're being told, which is what they experienced in the old times too, of course. I'm telling you, if you and I become acquainted with the Old Testament Scriptures, it'll sure help us with this New Testament record. So the woman flees into the wilderness. Now, we've already said some things about this before, and we've already said something about it at length in the book of Daniel, chapter 7. This woman flees into the wilderness. She has a place prepared of God. There are those who think that this woman here is the same woman as in chapter 17. The woman in 17 is a whore and a persecutor of God's people. She's the opponent and the enemy of God. This woman here produces the Messiah. This woman here is the people of God. This woman here is nourished by God. This woman here flees from the devil. Two women aren't the same. Oh, no. Everything in the book of Revelation that's worthwhile has an evil counterpart. Christ is the bright and morning star. The devil's the fallen star. Christ is the key of death and Hades. The devil is the key of the abyss. There's a mark of the beast in the name of the Father and of the Lamb. There's a lousy city in chapter 18, an abominable one. There's a beautiful city in chapters 21 and 22. There's everything that's worthwhile has a wicked counterpart. And here, there's a lovely woman. And in chapter 17, there's a whore. They're different altogether. Now then, she's nourished for 1,260 days. The next scene is a battle in heaven, 7 through 12. It's a kind of a deviation, because he'll go back to the woman in verse 13. What you're supposed to do is, in your mind's eye, picture the baby going up to heaven into the presence of God. And picture that roaring, bellowing, infuriated and frustrated devil. Him going up to heaven too. And in heaven, instead of meeting the Christ sends a message boy to take care of it. Sends Michael. In chapter 12, verse 7 through 12, there's war in heaven. Michael and his angels going forth to war with the dragon. And the dragon warred and his angels. And they prevailed not, that is the dragon and his angels. They prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. The great dragon was cast down, the old serpent, the devil, Satan, the deceiver of the world, was cast down to the earth, and his angels were cast down with him. Now in the Old Testament, when Israel was about to be delivered, Egypt stood ready to destroy the newly delivered Son of God. The dragon, Egypt, is called the dragon about 4 times in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, the devil manifested himself in Egypt. And the newly delivered Son of God, Israel, was being threatened by the dragon. But the dragon is destroyed in the midst of the seas. Get a concordance. Go through and see for yourself the word Rahab, the dragon, standing ready to devour the newly delivered Son of God. But the dragon is defeated, buried in the waters, and Moses in Exodus chapter 15 praises and thanks God and says, you alone are the deliverer. Speaks of God as the only one like him. And what I'm interested in is this phrase. 15:6. Well, let me begin at 15:4. Pharaoh's chariots and his host has he cast into the sea. The chosen captains are sunk in the deep. 6, Lord, you were glorious in power. You destroyed your enemies. Jehovah, in verse 18, will rule forever. And I'm looking for a phrase here that I can't find. And the phrase is, who is like unto thee, O Jehovah? Who is like unto thee, O Jehovah? There it is right there. I was beginning to panic. 15:11. Who is like unto thee, O Jehovah? What's the setting? The newly delivered Son of God, the newly delivered Son of God is threatened by Egypt. Egypt's going to destroy it. The Lord delivers the people from Egypt, destroys the dragon. Moses said, God, you really did the job. Who is like unto thee, O Jehovah? In Revelation chapter 12:7, we hear Michael and his angels fight the dragon. The name Michael means who is like unto God. So we're having the parallel, you see. What happens to the Israel in old time is now happened to the Christ. The devil is a loser against Christ and against his people. And in the picture, 7 through 12, the dragon goes up to heaven. He fights against a message boy of God, Michael, the representative of God and his people. And in that heavenly picture, he's defeated and cast down to the earth. And the word goes up, now is the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. Now they have victory. It's not new, it's a public manifestation of the devil's inability to win against heaven. All the victories of God's people on earth are won in heaven. We win nothing down here that wasn't won in heaven for us first. The accuser of our brethren is cast down. They overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb, because of the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives even unto death. Now notice what he says in 12. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Rejoice, heavens, and the dwellers in heaven. Who are these? Chapter 13 tells you. Verse 6. He opened his mouth for blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, even them that dwell in the heaven. They that dwell in the heaven are the tabernacle of God. They dwell in God and God in them. The dwellers in the heavens are God's people. The dwellers on the earth are the unforgiven ones. John is showing you and me here that the victory is wrought. Heaven rules. The devil cannot whip the Lord. He's whipped by one who represents God, who's called Michael. He's cast down out of heaven. He cannot beat the children of God. He cannot defeat the people of God. The only place that he has some success, that's on the earth, among those who dwell on the earth. He can't whip heaven. Heaven is where the children of God dwell. 13:6. He opens his mouth to blaspheme God and to blaspheme his tabernacle. Whose tabernacle? God's tabernacle. What is God's tabernacle? Even them that dwell in the heaven. Heaven rejoices. The people who dwell in heaven rejoice. These are the people of God. Paul in Philippians chapter 3 says, in verses 20 and following, our citizenship is in heaven. It's true we live on the earth, but our citizenship is in heaven. Philippians 3, 20 and following. Colossians 3, 1 and following. What has happened to us? We died, and our life is hid with Christ in God. We have been raised, says Paul in Colossians 3, 1 and following, to sit with Christ in heavenly places. Colossians 3, 1 and following. We sit in heaven. Our life is hid with Christ in God in heaven. And that's why we're called the dwellers in heaven, you see. Our citizenship is there. Our names are written there. Our master's there. And we sit with him in heaven, a fellow heir with him. That's why John will talk about us being the dwellers in heaven. So what are we being told? He can't win against the pregnant woman and her baby. He's pictured as going up into heaven. He's defeated in heaven. That's the realm of the people of God. The people of God dwell there. He's a loser against them. He's cast down to the earth. Verse 12. Rejoice, O heavens, and ye that dwell in them, the people of God. Woe for the earth and for the sea, because the devil is gone down unto you, having great wrath, knowing that he hath but a short time. He's manifesting himself in Rome. He's going to be utterly defeated. The savagery of a wounded enemy, a wounded lion, a wounded bear is made manifest. What they're about to see is terrible persecution from Rome. But that's simply a manifest token. That's only a manifest token of their defeat and our victory. Paul in Philippians chapter 1 will say in verse 28, don't be frightened by the adversary. I just want the principle out of this text, okay? Don't be frightened by the adversary, which is for them an evident token of perdition, but of your salvation and that of God. He said, look, when the adversary moves against you and starts to beat you up, don't be afraid of him. Be confident in the name of God. And that is an evident token of his perdition and your salvation. Rejoice, O heavens, you're the winners. He loses when he messes around with you. He loses when he messes around with those that dwell in heaven. That's the realm of God's people. That's where their citizenship is. But woe to those who don't dwell in the heavens. Woe to those who are not God's people. The devil comes down like a roaring, lumbering, bellowing dragon. God's people are not to be afraid of him. He's a wounded and defeated enemy. We're being told over and over again, the devil's a loser. Now he returns to the woman, the picture of the woman. The dragon saw that he was cast down to the earth. He persecuted the woman, but it brought forth the man-child. He's not persecuting the whore. In chapter 17, this woman isn't the whore. She's the good counterpart to the evil whore. Persecutes that woman, and she's given 2 wings of the great eagle. Hal Lindsey thinks that speaks of the U.S., I think it's 54th Airborne Division. Anyway, the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle. That's usual speech in the Scriptures. She flies into the wilderness, and a place prepared for her where she's nourished time, times, and half a time. Now that lets you know, of course, that time, times, and half a time is equivalent to 1,260 days. That's up there in verse 6. Now then, the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a river. Now you remember how when Israel in the old time was delivered, and they went through the water, and God used the water to destroy the enemies of Israel. Now the devil is trying to pull a God stunt, and he wants to use water in the vision. He wants to use water to destroy the people of God. He's trying to ape God, but he can't do it. For the earth, 16, swallows up the river, and the dragon's mad as a hatter. Now God could use water to destroy the dragon, but the dragon couldn't use water to destroy God's people. It's a picture of the devil losing once, losing twice, losing once again. Sounds like an old-time song, doesn't it? But it's good news. Now the woman is the people of God as a corporate whole. The woman, and check this for yourself in the Scriptures, the woman is used as the people of God as a corporate group. Her seed is the people of God looked at on an individual basis. He can't destroy the church as a corporate whole. The best he can do is turn on individual believers, and that's what he does in verse 17. But what did chapter 12 say to us? The devil's a 3-time loser. God has manifested his power against him. So, chapters 10, 11, and 12 are written to comfort the people. The trumpets were blown. They didn't repent. The brethren were worried, sick. What kind of an enemy are we fighting? He's so tough and so hard-headed and so cruel. 10, 11, and 12 said, he may be tough and cruel, but you're winners. That's what he says in 10, 11, and 12. Now then, he goes into detail with regard to the character of the opponents of God's people in chapter 13. And when we read chapter 13, we'll know why they needed that comfort in 10 through 12 and why they'll need it again in chapter 14. Chapter 13, 1 through 10, the sea beast. We said already in our study in Daniel that the sea represents the nations of the earth and their turmoil. Isaiah 17, 12 and 13. Isaiah 57, verse 20. Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 and verse 15. The waters that the whore sits on are peoples. 57:20 of Isaiah. The wicked are like the troubled sea. They're always casting up mire and dirt. They're in a constant state of flux. Daniel chapter 7, 3 and following. It's out of the sea upon which the wind of God blows that the 4 beasts arise. And out of the sea in chapter 13, 1 through 10, comes this persecuting power, Rome. In Daniel chapter 2 and chapter 7, we saw 4 kingdoms. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then Rome. In chapter 7 in particular, we saw the 4 kingdoms represented as 4 beasts. A lion, a bear, a leopard, and then something indescribable. In chapter 7 and verse 12, we heard that though the first 3 beasts had no more kingdom, they lived on. They lived on because they lived on in Rome, the 4th kingdom. And we're going to find in here that Rome is described as a composite of what made up Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. The sea beast is Rome from its persecuting power angle. Here we go. He stood upon the sand of the sea. I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. There he's on the beach. Picture a wind-whipped day. Picture the waves blowing everywhere, high and ugly. And watch, coming up out of that sea, this gargantuan. Comes up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads on his head. Having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns 10 diadems, and upon his heads names of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, feet as the feet of bear, mouth as the mouth of a lion. Daniel, looking forward, speaks of a lion, bear, and a leopard. John, looking back, speaks of a leopard, a bear, and a lion. This animal is made up of the elements of the previous 3. In this animal, the 4th beast of Daniel 7, the others live on because this one embodies their character. Verse 2 says, the B part, and the dragon gave him his authority and his throne and great authority. Behind this animal is the devil. And I saw one of his heads, one of his 7 heads, as though it had been smitten unto death. And his death stroke was healed. Now when it says, I saw one of his heads as though it had been smitten unto death, he's really saying, I saw it smitten unto death. The as though doesn't mean that it didn't really happen. No, he's just describing it. I saw it. I realized it was a vision. But in the vision, it was described as though it were dead. In Revelation chapter 5, the as though it were slain is applied to the Lamb, and it really was slain. We'll take it up from there next time.